For those of you who were on a few minutes ago, I'm just going to repeat, welcome to the Design for Drupal Boston 2020 webinar series. It's the 12th anniversary of D4D this year. So thank you to those who have joined us in the past at our in-person Design for Drupal events, and we're glad to see all everybody that has joined before and all the new people who were able to join this virtual event. This is our, like I said, our 12th anniversary, so we're excited to be here. Today's webinar is going to be on Olivero, the making of Drupal 9's a new front-end theme with Mike Herchel. You can see Mike's information there, connection information. Mike works for Lullabot, and we'll get to introduce Mike in a minute. We're just going to do a few housekeeping things first. I just want to, we had a keynote in June for Design for Drupal. We want to say thank you to Christina Schumalis. She did a great keynote that's recorded if you didn't get to see it on design, usability, accessibility, and compatibility. And that was meeting the challenges of today's world with the Claro admin theme. So thank you, Christina, for that. It was a great keynote. Everybody enjoyed the information that you shared. During our event back in June, we also had a 24-hour global contribution day. We just wanted to thank Christina, the mentors, and all the participants who participated in that contribution day. Just remember that you can keep contributing to Drupal 9, or Drupal 8, or whatever you'd like to do. There's some Slack channels here. Join Admin UI for Claro, D9 theme for Olivero. And everybody's welcome to join. You can, if you're a designer, front-end themer, back-end coder, there's documentation, testing, accessibility. There's plenty to do in the issue queues. So just get on to one of those channels in Slack and just say, this is what I'm looking to do. And there are people there that are online waiting to help you out. So even if you missed the 24-hour global day that we had, please, remember you can always hop on and join and start contributing. Our upcoming webinar series, this is the first with Mike, as I said. These are held monthly on Wednesdays at noon, one Wednesday each month for now. On August 12th, we're going to have Jason Palmental talk about getting graphic, reinventing design with type on the web. On September 9th, we have Miriam Suzanne, who was our keynote a few years back. She's going to do CSS is rad. And then November 11th, Johanna Bates and Clayton Dewey are going to talk about consentful UX. So we still have some openings throughout the year. People are getting their schedule set. It's hard with everything virtual going on. So if you know of somebody, or if you think that you would like to present during our webinar series, please reach out to us. And you can sign up for the webinars at designfordrupal.org. Community events real quick. DrupalCon Global is next week, July 14th to 17th. It is virtual this year. We're trying to make it as close to the in-person events as possible. The summits are free to join. There's a hallway track where you can meet other members of the community. There's access to the sponsors. There's a ton of sessions. Obviously, the usual Dries note. Then there's a lot of plenaries with open source leaders, which would be very interesting. And then trivia. Trivia is always a favorite of a lot of people at DrupalCon. For those who haven't been to DrupalCon before, there's all kinds of Drupal-related questions. So that's a fun time. And they're going to do that online as well. So if you haven't signed up, go to DrupalCon Global and sign up for that event. NedCamp, which is one of our local events, New England Drupal Camp, is November 6th. Actually, instead of just having a virtual sessions like a lot of camps do, they're trying something different this year, and it's going to be a virtual BOFCon. So it's going to be birds of a feather sessions where people with like interests get together and talk about a specific topic. So that's a really cool idea. So looking forward to that. There's a community events page on Drupal.org that you should check out with all the virtual events and all the other Drupal events going on. There's local meetups. I happen to put the Boston one because that's where Design for Drupal typically is held, but there's meetups all over the world. So check out your local meetups, and a lot of them are virtual now, and that you can meet a lot of people in your community and network at those events. And then if you're not a member of the Drupal Association, please consider joining the Drupal Association on Drupal.org. The code of conduct applies to our virtual events as well as our in-person events. It is listed at the bottom of the Design for Drupal website. So, all attendees on this webinar, Q&A and everything that happens here, we expect that people, know and understand the code of conduct for Drupal. If anybody has any concerns, reach out to myself or Patrick Corbett at the numbers listed there. I want to take 1 second here to thank all the digital sponsors. These people all stepped up once we changed the event from an in-person to a virtual event. So Redfin Solutions, Lullabot, McPhee Design, AGI, Dev Collaborative, Oomph, Isovera, Talking Drupal, 108 Degrees, and Odd Bird. So thank you all for helping us to run these events. And spread the word about today's event on social media. The hashtag is D4D, the number 4D Boston. And just want to say again, welcome to those who haven't been at Design for Drupal before. It's a great event. We'll see what we'll do for next year. But remember to always be kind to everybody that you interact with. That's the key thing we like to say at Design for Drupal. Drupal's a great community, and reach out and meet other members of the community as much as you can. All right, so without further ado, we're going to start today's webinar. Mike Herchel. The topic is Olivero, the making of Drupal 9's front-end theme. Mike's a senior front-end developer at Lullabot. He does a lot. He's also the lead of the Drupal 9 core Olivero theme initiative. There's a bunch of different initiatives within, each one of our core releases. So the Olivero theme is one of the initiatives, and Mike is helping to lead that this year. Not this year, since it started. Mike probably feels like it's been a lifetime ago. Mike is also one of the co-organizers for the Florida Drupal Camp. He does a lot. He maintains the Drupal Quick Link module, and he's one of the co-hosts of the Lullabot podcast. So without further ado, Mike, why don't you take over and teach us about Olivero and all the trials and tribulations and all the successes that you had making this great front-end theme.
Thank you. Yeah, there have been some trials and tribulations. So I'm going to share my screen here if I can, but I think you might have to stop first. Yes, I'm going to stop and share desktop number 2. And I'm going to hit the present button. So I hope everybody can see my title slide right here. It says, Olivero, the making of Drupal 9's new front-end theme. I am Mike Herchel. I'm a senior front-end dev at Lullabot. I guess I already had the intro, but I live in Gainesville, Florida, which is in the US. And as a Floridian, my hobbies include riding around on motorcycles barefoot and with chainsaws and lighting stuff on fire. Before I get too much farther, I want to talk about the namesake of this theme. Early last year, the Drupal community mourned the passing of Herchel Olivero, and we've named this theme in her honor. Herchel touched many people in both the Drupal and accessibility communities. She worked at the National Federation of the Blind, and she was committed to making technology accessible to all people. We chose the name Olivero not just because we have made accessibility a top priority, but because we aspire to develop this theme in our community in a manner that is consistent with the qualities that Herchel embodied, including patience, generosity, and inclusivity. So what we're going to talk about the origin of this theme and why we need it. We're going to talk about the team, putting the band together, design challenges, development challenges, personal challenges, and then we're going to talk about into the future. So I don't know if anyone remembers Blue Marine. Blue Marine is like circa Drupal 4.7. It's a little bit before my time. So this is what Drupal looked like early back in the day. And Drupal 5, Garland was introduced. This was the default theme for Drupal. When you install Drupal, it would look like this. This is when I first got involved with Drupal. I remember pretty clearly like hacking Garland in core and kind of making it my own website, and yeah, it was kind of fun. And Drupal 7, which was released in early 2011, Bartik was released. So Bartik was the default theme for Drupal from Drupal 7 on. And so that includes Drupal 7, Drupal 8, and now Drupal 9. And when Bartik was created by Jen Simmons, it was not even responsive at the time. Responsive web design was not a thing. And it just had some basic functionality. And as it looks right now, it looks a little long in the tooth. It looks like a little old and dated because 10 years is a very long time in internet years. Fast forward to DrupalCon Seattle, I ended up hanging out with a bunch of people, including Putra Bonacorsi, who is now a co-lead with me on this initiative. We started talking about how, Bartik really doesn't convey like the awesomeness that is Drupal and all the cool things that you can do, and it kind of looks a little old and clunky. And we ended up having some conversations with some other people, including Gabor and Angie Byron. And here we are here I am with them and Matthew Tiff in front of the Space Needle. And we ended up just talking about themes. And we also talked to Larry Escala, who's the front end maintainer. And we started saying, well, what would it look like if we maybe created a new theme, And so when we were on my way home, I was at the airport, and I think like Putra, this is a picture of Putra Bonacorsi, and I think we shared like an Uber to the airport, and we caught breakfast, and that's not the breakfast, but that's like a breakfast off of Google Images, and that's kind of what breakfast would look like if I were eating it. And and we were talking, man, we were saying, well, we should really do this. This would be so awesome if we did this and got this theme in the core, and then it started looking good and all that type of stuff. And yeah, so we started putting together the band, so Putra and I ended up kind of talking Jen Witowski into it. I said, hey, Jen, it's not going to be a lot of work, ha, ha, ha. And she talked to her boss, Jared Ponchat, who's our creative director, and then we eventually tricked Matthew Tiff to becoming involved too. Matthew is also a lead of the configuration management initiative, so he has a little bit of experience getting stuff in the core and just dealing with stuff. And then to balance out, to make everything look even, I added Alice from the Brady Bunch here. So hopefully someone added the people get that joke, because it's pretty good. And I also want to just thank everybody else that committed to, or that chipped in to where we're at right now, and we still have a long way to go. But you can see this list of committers that we have for Olivero is very long. There's a lot of community that's helping out, and I just want to thank these people. What's up, Millie? No, I'm on a webinar. Thanks, though. And so let's talk about design challenges, right? The theme needs to look modern yet friendly, but we don't control the content. We don't know what people are going to do with the content. We don't even control the content types. We don't know what type of content they're going to create. They might do date events, they might do articles, they might do entity references and all types of crap. We don't really control anything. And so like, how can you design for that? On top of that, we have like a somewhat opinionated community, only a little bit, opinionated. And so like I'm conveying this to Jen Witowski and Jared Poncha, our designers, and they're like, well, all right, well, who's our stakeholders? Who are we designing for? Well, you're designing for everybody. And well, that's not good, because like decisions need to be made. And if you get a couple thousand people in a room, they're not going to decide anything. And so we kind of narrowed down our stakeholders to like a number of maintainers for Drupal, including Dries Boytart, who's the project lead, Christina Trumias, who is the UX maintainer and who was keynote at D4D last month. Larry Escala is the front-end maintainer, and then Gabor and Angie Byron, I'm pretty sure they just kind of do everything else ever. I don't really know what their titles are, but they're like the manager of initiatives, get stuff doneers and all that. And then once again, to fill stuff in, I threw in Alice again. And so we put together this survey. And the survey basically asks the stakeholders how to choose, like on where you want this theme to look, you know, on the line between formal and casual, or approachable and official, or warm and cool. Where should this theme lie? And so we had a bunch of feedback, and in this feedback, people would also explain their thought processes. You know, I would want something restrained, but I also wanted to make sure it meets accessibility guidelines, etc. And so we came up with 3 designs, you know, ranging from somewhat traditional to something more modern, you know. And we got on some Zoom calls with the stakeholders, and we you know, designers walked them through the various features and thought processes behind this. And so we kind of settled on number 2 right there. And so from there, it was kind of off to the races, going into Figma. Figma is a design tool. If you're not familiar with it, it's an online design tool. And so Jen and Jared went in there and kind of went to town on this and started kind of creating a lot of different things. And so what I'm giving right here is like maybe like a 30,000 foot overview of this. But if you want to get into like some more nitty gritty details, a week from tomorrow, Jen and Jared are speaking at this on DrupalCon Global. And I've seen this session before, and it is fantastic. They're both fantastic speakers, and they both have like very deep thought processes on what went into the design process and everything like that. And it's really, really good. I have, for those of you that want to go to DrupalCon that don't yet have a ticket, I'm actually giving one out at the end of this webinar too. And I haven't figured out quite how, but I have one speaker code to give out, and I'd like to give it out to someone that maybe couldn't afford to go, or otherwise maybe wouldn't go. If you're already planning on going but haven't bought your ticket, you should just give the DA your money because they kind of need it. So I want to talk about development challenges. I am by trade a front-end developer, so this is what I've been dealing with. I want so first of all, we can't really control the content at all. We have to balance the use of modern technologies that enable some of the stuff, but we also support older browsers. Accessibility is a top priority, and accessibility, I know a lot of people say accessibility is easy, just don't screw it up, but I don't believe that. I think accessibility is harder than it should be. And I think that's, in my personal opinion, that's kind of a failing of the web platform. Core coding requirements. So this says like what technologies we can use. You know, we can't use technologies such as Sass or maybe a particular JavaScript library if we wanted to. We can only use software or fonts that's licensed with, you know, approved licenses. So like, you know, there are certain fonts we were able to use and certain fonts we cannot use because this theme is hosted on Drupal.org and it's part of, you know, Drupal software, which is, you know, GPL3 licensed. So that's, or GPL2, I don't even know, but that's important. And then like, I just want to reiterate, we support Internet Explorer 11 in core, and Internet Explorer 11 is very old, and it's a pain in the butt to work with. It's like it doesn't support things like CSS custom properties or CSS grid in any decent way, and our CSS bundles are probably about twice as large as they otherwise would be, and because of that, I actually put down I11 twice because it's such a pain in the ass. So I also want to give a huge shout out in this section to the contributors that worked on both the Claro theme and the Umami theme. And those are themes that are going to Drupal for the backend and then for demo, and they really blazed away in so many different ways that enabled us to kind of stand on their shoulders. In particular, Umami did a lot of work like allowing custom fonts to be used. Claro did a lot of work getting post CSS into core, which enables like the processing of CSS before it gets shipped to the browser. And so I want to talk a little bit about the grid system that we have here, because the grid system is kind of a challenge. As it looks right here, we have like a 14 wide grid system and it looks very basic, but I want to kind of talk, if you scroll down the page a bit, you see some things that are a little bit more complicated. So you see the content right here is kind of constrained to, I don't know, what's that, maybe eight columns. And then within that, you see like the block quote actually pulls out of there, you know? So how could we do this if you just think about this? Well, normally with CSS Grid, you would maybe assign the paragraph nodes, or not nodes, paragraph elements to, you know, a certain grid, and then the block quote to larger. But the thing is, we don't even know if they're going to be using paragraphs. We don't know what's going to be using in there, if they're just going to have text in there. And then you see like this like little pull image right here that's pulling out to the right, and this thing is just way outside. This is pulled over and this is floated. And of course, this is content, so this image could be floated wherever, you know, and the text, of course, needs to also wrap around it. And that gets kind of complicated. You know, how can you accomplish this and support Internet Explorer 11 at the same time? You know, modern browsers do not support anything like subgrid yet. Internet Explorer definitely doesn't. Internet Explorer has very rudimentary support for CSS Grid. Like, what's going on? How are we going to handle that? And so I'm going to get into like the so-called meat and potatoes of this presentation right now, and kind of walk through the demo and some code. And I love this GIF right here. You see this little dude on the scooter, and he's like hitting every single car ever. He hits the motorbike here, hits another car, and then bam. So this is like the perfect analogy right here for my for my demo walkthrough. So I just want to kind of manage expectations right here. So I'm going to get out of this, and I am going to kind of move over to Firefox here, and I'm going to kind of show some stuff. But hold on, one more thing. We have, if you kind of want to follow along a little bit, we have a live URL that's powered by Tugboat. So if you go in your browser to lb.cm/Olivero, that will actually redirect to a Tugboat URL. Tugboat, if you don't know, is like, it's a software as a service, and basically like you throw a YAML file in your directory, and then on every PR or commit or whatever you want, it'll spin up a new site with its own custom URL and comments. It's really awesome. So if you're not familiar with Tugboat, you should check that out. But you can go to lb.cm/Olivero and kind of follow along on your own right here. And Leslie, if there's any questions or anything, just feel free to interrupt me at any given time here.
Sure, and I did neglect to say the Q&A is being used and not the chat for anybody that has any questions. I do have one question that's relevant so far. Why does the D9 theme have to support IE 11? That's from Eric.
Yeah, so this is a decision made at the Drupal core level. So Drupal core in general supports Internet Explorer 11. And because this is intended to go into core, that means we have to support Internet Explorer 11. So that's it. Now you might kind of wonder why Drupal core supports Internet Explorer 11, and there's a big, that's kind of a question too, but the main reason is because there are a lot of countries that it's still very popular to use Internet Explorer 11. I know, like, I guess in Korea it's used pretty well. There's also data out there that says, like, a lot of assistive devices, like screen readers and things like that, users still tend to use Internet Explorer 11. And Internet Explorer, a lot of governments still use Internet Explorer 11, and Drupal, you know, it kind of tends to gravitate toward the enterprise large websites. And so, yeah, that's important. As it stands right now, there's an issue in the Drupal core issue queue to remove Internet Explorer 11 support for Drupal 10. And I commented on the issue and put like a whole bunch of like little please emojis. And if you have any comments on that or thoughts, you can look that up and maybe support that too. Any other questions, Leslie?
Just one other that you probably will be getting to, and it's what version of Drupal will Olivero replace Bartik in?
Yeah, we're hoping to go into core with 9.1, which is going to be released in November, and we're hoping to make it the default on 9.2. But all right, so I'm still sharing my screen. I'm just going to kind of walk through some features right now. And then I'm going to show my code editor, and we're just going to kind of go through here. So this is running on my local right here. As I said, you could go to lb.cm/Olivero, and that should redirect to a Tugboat URL. And this Tugboat URL, if it if it works here. Maybe I need to put HTTP in there front. Yeah, well, we're just going to assume that's going to work at some point. But so this is running on my local right here because my local is a little bit more up to date than Tugboat is. So the first thing you're going to see right here is that we actually have drop-down menus, which like Bartik didn't have drop-down menus out of the box. You know, that's something pretty cool. As you scroll down, the header actually kind of slides out of the way, and you can kind of see that right there, and you can reopen it. And that's like a cool feature. There's a little social bar over here. Right now, we just have the syndicate block in there that basically becomes fixed, and you know that's intended. So in case you want to throw in like your social media icons or something like that in there, that would be something that would be, I don't know, pretty common in there. Tugboat is not responding. That's not a good demo. Nice. And so you can scroll down. You can see we have some teasers for articles and some pages here, and you go into like an article here, and you can kind of see this is what it looks like. You know, we have a large image here that this image is getting added. This image style is actually being added into core, and I think it's actually committed. So Drupal 9.1 will have an image style called wide that's going to support that. And then you can kind of see we have some floated images out here. So the navigation right here, like imagine, if you will, you just had a whole bunch of items right here, and you want to, I'm going to log in. If I can remember my password. Yeah, all right. So imagine that you have like a whole bunch of items and it's taking up too much space. Well, we're creating a theme, or we created a theme setting in here. And the theme setting enables you to turn on always on mobile navigation, enable mobile menu at all widths. And if we do that and go back to the site, now we have this at all widths. And this is just like a standard mobile menu. You can kind of see how this works right here. To make it a little bit easier to test this stuff out, I'm going to turn that off really quick. And I'm going to enable this checkbox for debug options. This is something that's going to get removed in the core, and it enables us to just toggle some things, like we can add in the logo, you can change the mobile nav to always on, and you can enable right to left support for languages such as like Arabic and stuff like that. And yeah, so we also have maybe a scenario where you don't want that blue background because you're throwing in a logo, you know, so you can set that area back there to white if you'd like. And if you do that, you can throw in a logo there. And you can also set it to gray. You can kind of see how things are going to look like right there, which is pretty cool. So like the goal is to really make this kind of flexible. You know, we want people to actually use this for their blogs and things like that. Just knowing that, you know, Drupal is typically, it has custom themes created for it. This will maybe give an option if you just want to throw up a blog or something. And it also like makes it look good out of the box. So it gives like that, like all important, like, you know, the fresh smell to it, if that makes sense. So let's look at some forms right here. So the web form module comes with some default forms in here, like some accessibility forms. So you can kind of see how like some of these forms look and interact right here. There's still some accessibility work to be done by this, but you can kind of see how like some of the focus states work if I tab around here. Something that I'd like to show off is also the grid. To see it, we're using CSS grid in here, and let me kind of just show what that's going to look maybe on this right here. And I'll go into some code and stuff in a bit. But so I'm opening up DevTools right here, and I'm going to, within Firefox, you can kind of check some boxes right here, and it shows you where the grid lines are, and you can kind of see how things align properly right here. And you can see even these floated images out here are aligned properly, which is kind of cool. And I'll show you how that was done in a bit. And I also, within views, you know, you ever go into views and have you ever gone into a view and you set your format to grid and you go into your settings and you have all these options right here. And then you go to the actual page and you realize that it's not responsive and it looks horrible and all that type of stuff. Well, this theme actually fixes that. We actually did a good amount of work, and I'd love to actually maybe commit this to views too. But so it's responsive now, and it'll kind of go in between various different, you know, 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, or up to 8 columns options. And within there, so right now we're just using Flexbox to handle this. Grid also has an option for a vertical layout, so you can see the first items here, second items there, and it's like a vertical grid, so it kind of flows from the top to the bottom. This would be like so easy to do if we could support CSS grid. Like it would be like 3 lines of CSS or something like that. But because of the Internet Explorer 11 support, we're using CSS columns here and layers of multiple divs and paddings and stuff like that. But it works great, and that's what matters. We're also supporting Layout Builder. I don't know if I have Layout Builder turned on here. Let me check. As I'm doing this, Leslie, is there any more questions or anything like that?
Yeah, sorry. There is one other question. What's the likelihood that views responsiveness will get will be allowed to be put into core when the Olivero theme is included?
Well, I mean, right now it's done on the theme side of stuff, so I'm just going to kind of just get that in right there, and I hope that if core committers decide that doesn't want to go in there, they have a really good reason to not put it in there. As far as putting it into the views style sheets and the views templates directly, I don't even have an issue open up yet. And if someone wants to help out with this and take the lead, I will totally help out. And you can copy a good amount of the CSS work and templates that I've created, and then just kind of de-abstract it a little bit for core, and it would work out. It wouldn't be terribly difficult, and I think it would be a big win. But my focus right now is just spent on Olivero, and managing that stuff is just a lot of work.
Right. So we talked about contributions earlier. So if somebody on the call would like to help Mike out there, just reach out and let him know. And, you know, like you said, he'll help you out with that. So it's a good way to get involved and have great mentoring at the same time. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. So I enabled Layout Builder right here for pages, and so we have full Layout Builder support in here. So Layout Builder, if you don't know, is basically like a page builder for Drupal, and you can create different sections here. So core comes with some default 1 column, 2 column, and 3 column options right here, and it even allows you to kind of set different options in here. So we ended up doing, like, you know, the overrides for the templates and overrides for the style sheets for these. So you can add stuff in there, and you know, it's a little bit tricky because we have to add the appropriate spacing in there. You know, because we have like our grid gaps, and we're not using CSS grid here. We have to use Flexbox, and so just long story short, it works as expected, and it looks good, and I'm super excited about it. So I'm going to get into some code and maybe just start kind of talking a little bit about the grid right now. And if you have any questions, just pop up here.
We have one, Mike, that you might want to
Sure.
answer before you get into the code. This is from Anonymous. Do you have some pop-up, I guess, this tool in the form? For example, when we click on Add Article, it should display in modal box instead of opening in a new tab. Is that feature somehow coming up, or is it there?
I would totally love that, but that's it. So there's modules that enable that within. Like the long story short of that is that's out of the scope of the theme. Like there's so many things I would love to do for Drupal core, and like usability improvements like that is one of them. But this is just the theme, and we're limited in the scope at the delineation of where the theme ends and where the core site functionality begins. That being said, it's possible, but and there's a module for that, and I think the module is called like Layout Builder Modal or something like that. If you Google that, it'll probably take you to it, and that will allow you to create open up items from Layout Builder in a modal, as opposed to having them in the sidebar, and that might be closer to a user experience that you're looking for. So I'm gonna maybe zoom in right here so make sure everybody can see this properly. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about like the site structure right here and what we're looking at. So our templates, a lot of these are taken from either Claro or Classy and modified as needed. You can kind of, there's not too much funkiness in there except for in the navigation, which I can talk about. And let's see, I want to talk a little bit about the grid. So under CSS, we have, I'm in dist, I need to go in source. We have CSS variables defined here. And these CSS variables are not real variables because they're actually compiled. They're more like Sass variables because they get compiled by a post-CSS process, and then they're available throughout the rest of the CSS code base as it gets compiled. So what that means is if we want to change a CSS variable at a certain media query breakpoint, we have to define a new variable for that. So you can kind of see, like, I have a CSS variable called grid gap right here. And if we didn't have to support I11, we could just have one variable name right here, and then you would have like multiple breakpoints, and within multiple media queries, and within those different media queries, you would define your different values, and your browser processes that at runtime as it's rendering the web page, and it just works beautifully. Because we support IE11 and because the polyfills for Internet Explorer 11 just don't work properly, and we have tested them out, we're compiling all this before it gets to the browser. So we have like a variable right here for the grid gap, and then once we hit different breakpoints, we kind of append a different breakpoint to the end of that. When we get into the grids right here, you can kind of see there's some funky math going on. And so we actually have little helpers right here that like give you the grid column width, or the grid column width at the medium breakpoint, or the grid column width at the max breakpoint. And the same thing for the grid full width. And so what that enables us to do is use margins to break out of the grid. And I can show you what that looks like. I think there's an embedded media right here. So you can see, like right here, we have, if we want if the image is floated or to the right in the text content, we actually pull it out of the grid per the design, if you remember that. So you can kind of see, like right now, let's see, that we're pulling this to the right. So we apply a negative margin right, and you can see the math that we're doing right here. So we do like the grid column width plus a gap value. And then at larger ones, we actually pull it 3 times the grid column width plus a gap. And so there's some complicated math that we have to do right here. That's kind of a pain in the butt to get this to pull out. And what that enables us to do is it enables us to kind of do the things where we're pulling this item out of the grid. But once again, if you were to turn on the grids right here, it still conforms to the grid, still pulls out and looks proper at the grids, So that's something that's kind of cool. And we do that also for block quotes and things like that. And we do it for this image right here. There's a couple places in here that we do it. There's also, when you're using CSS Grid, you have to assign a a calling value, like you have your grid parent that says, this is going to be maybe 14 columns, but then you have to assign these values to your children of that grid parent, and you have to say like, all right, I want you to start on column 2 and end on column 14 or something like that. And so the question is, well, how do we do that? Because we don't even know what CSS classes this content's going to have. We don't know anything in there, and everything's like kind of messed up because of that. So we have to solve that, we have some grid helpers in here, and we have some classes where we say layout pass content narrow, or layout content narrow. And so what we can do is we can add on a CSS class onto a parent that says layout pass content narrow, or layout content narrow if we have access to the children directly. And what we can do is we have like, a direct descendant and then an asterisk in there, which is universal selector. So anything that's under the CSS class will conform to the grid right here. There's probably a question, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, Internet Explorer 11 does not support CSS grid. And the answer to that is that it supports kind of a rudimentary CSS grid that was really, really old. And so the syntax is all different, but we have a post-CSS process called auto prefixer that kind of compiles it and works with that, but it has some very limitations. IE has some limitations where it doesn't automatically like do auto placement, which means like if you just say like column 1, it'll just stack them right on top of each other, and it won't like stack them vertically. And that will kind of make things overlap and look really, really bad. And we have a class in here that says CSS auto row that kind of helps with this right here, and it works up to 10. And since we don't use it with that many items, it'll work fine. And so that's a pain in the butt. Another pain that IE 11 cannot do is with like normal CSS grid, you can count from the end by using negative numbers, and with CSS, but IE 11 doesn't allow that. So you can't just say I want this to go full width and go from column 1 to column -1, and just have it always span 1. You have to go through your various breakpoints. If your columns change, you have to say like, all right, I want this to go to grid from column 1 to column 7, and then at this breakpoint from column 1 to column 14, and it's just a pain in the butt. So we have to keep track of that, and it's a pain in the butt. So like that's some of the challenges that we have right here, and it's working. There's some other challenges that we have here too. I want to talk a little bit about some accessibility header stuff here, but Leslie, are there any questions that I'm missing here?
There are no other questions right now. Oh, one just came in. Was it not an option to offer an alternative, simpler layout for IE 11, or is it an explicit project goal to have the theme look as much the same in IE 11 as possible?
We could have just went like straight up Flexbox, honestly, and we probably could have got it pretty close. But I also want this to like be forward looking. So like in Drupal 10, if IE 11 does get removed, we can just like yank it out more easily. As far as like having like a degraded experience where you just stack everything, that's possible, but this is this. So we're doing it right. And, because this is core, it's going to be seen by, potentially millions of people. And a lot of those people are going to be using IE 11 for better or worse. So yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the header here, or because and some accessibility challenges that we have here. So let's go into Firefox, and I'm going to open up actually, I might copy and paste this from. This is Drupal 8. This is like, I throw everything horrible on this thing, and this is like hard problems for it. So I'm in Firefox here, and we're going to explore some of this header right here, and I want to kind of just show what this looks like. So we have a drop-down menu right here, and I want to kind of talk a little bit about accessibility. And so, the header has a bunch of list items in there. The drop-down menu might have a link that links somewhere. It's a common accessibility anti-pattern where people will just do a hover state on this, on the LI element, and then have this drop-down pop up. And the problem with that is that these drop-downs are typically not able to be accessed, outside of hover states. Like if you're using something like a screen reader or tabs or something like that, you're not going to be able to get to it. And then like another problem is that like if you are using a screen reader and you don't have the visual reference, you don't know that like these items that just popped in, even if you can get to them, where they came from, and that they're necessarily nested under, say, this products menu and stuff. So if you were to look at this right here, we have some logic in our twig template right here, and this twig template inserts a button. And the button, of course, is just it has a pretty big tap target on it, but style-wise, it just looks like that little chevron right there. And then the button has some ARIA attributes on it. It has ARIA controls set to the nested submenu, the ID of the nested submenu, and it sets ARIA expanded false. And there's also a little bit of JavaScript involved here because like when the only way to really toggle these ARIA attributes is through JavaScript, which like when I say accessibility is hard, this is like one of the things. Like I think that you shouldn't need JavaScript. I personally think that it should be handled somewhere else, but that's a little bit outside of this, obviously. But so because we actually hide the button, we do like I think it's like ARIA role presentation or something like that. If JavaScript is not enabled, and then once JavaScript's enabled, it'll just kind of remove that and work like normal. So if you were to tab through here, you can see you can tab to the hyperlink, and if I were to click on that, it would navigate there. And then I tab to the button right here, and if I hit enter on the button, it'll toggle the menu, and I can hit the escape button or something like that if I want to, and then it toggles down. You can see the focus states right here are not very visible, and that's an open issue. So you're like, if you're an accessibility person, you're thinking these focus states, Mike, are BS. Yeah, we're working on that, and we have work on that. But so you can kind of see that the search is pretty cool. We have like some cool search animations for that. And once again, if you were to turn on your mobile navigation, you can kind of see all of this is available right here. With Drupal 9, and this is something I have an article on littlebot.com that hasn't been published yet, but Drupal 9 gives you an ability to create a button directly. And this actually got into Drupal 8.9 too. So you can, Drupal 9, if you don't know, you can create a button element by, like if I were to edit this right here, it's under, you type in route:button. And this is something that y'all can use right now if you like. It says button right there, but you have to do route button. And then it will create a button element for you. And this is included in Drupal core. And we're supporting that, and it's styled nicely, and you can kind of toggle that and things like that. So like navigation for me is one of the most critical parts of the website, because that's how people get around your website. It needs to be understandable, it needs to be usable, it needs to have like cool little, you can see these cool animations that we have in here. It needs to look good, feel good, and it needs to be accessible. There's like navigations can get very complicated. And so that's something that we're working on. And and then of course it needs to accommodate everything, because you can throw in so much stuff in here too. So that's something I'd like to talk about, or I guess I just did talk about. So we have like a lot of JavaScript. Well, not a lot of JavaScript. I think at the total we load about 20 kilobytes of JavaScript, and that JavaScript is not using jQuery. We use just regular vanilla JavaScript. And so you can see things like our second level navigation here. You can kind of see this has been recently refactored to use Drupal behaviors, and you can. It's fairly easy to understand, honestly, and I'm really kind of excited about it. I guess this is the actual modern version. The core CSS gets compiled from like ES6 style into regular ES5 style, once again because of our support for our commitment to IE 11. I don't know how. I guess I'm kind of run up to time, so I might switch back. Are there any more questions that we have here?
Yes, there's 2 questions actually. One's from Ruth. Will anything be done for aggregating header menus into a mobile menu?
Well, so aggregating header menus into mobile menu. So this menu right now automatically transforms into the mobile menu. So if that's what you're talking about, it's already done. And, so this website is fully responsive, looks good, and you can and should try it out right now and try to find all the bugs that you can and send them my way. I tested out on like a lot of devices, so that's kind of where we're at right now. If you throw your menus into this header region up here, you can let me show you the regions that we have defined. We have like a primary menu region, and if you throw your navigation in here, it'll automatically just kind of say, hey, this is navigation and we're in this region. I'm going to apply this template to it. So that should hopefully work. And I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah,
hopefully.
I think there was a clarifying remark made here. Like a main menu plus a utility menu. So they're trying to, sounds like they're trying to combine 2 menus into a mobile menu.
Like we have 2 menus right here. So this over here is secondary menu, and then this is the primary menu. So that's what we're supporting right now. If you have 3 menus, we can't, we're trying to support everything, but we're not necessarily supporting everything, but we do have 2 menus up there. So hopefully that will do the job.
Perfect. Excellent. Thanks.
Anything else?
No, we have about 5 more minutes.
All right. So
for timing.
Yeah. So let's kind of get a move on here. Get back to presenting here. So accessibility, accessibility is hard, we're working on things like focus states, logical focus order. We're literally duplicating the search block markup in the DOM just so we can keep logical focus orders. Contrast, we've adjusted our colors to meet contrast, like WCAG contrast stuff. Proper ARIA use is more complicated than I knew. I've learned so much from our Drupal core accessibility maintainers in this whole process. I want to talk about some personal challenges. For me, I've been almost like manic depressive on this project, where I've been working and I'm just busting stuff out, and then I'll stop and I'll get burnt out, and then I get back. I feel guilty, and then I get back on, and it feels like this whole cycle for me. I just been kind of going around, and it's been difficult, and I haven't really so much learned to deal with it yet. I tell myself there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that's getting this into core, but it's still a long way away, and I really don't know the answer about that. I know that Leslie, you mentioned that you were given some sessions on this, or you're speaking in a panel or something at DrupalCon. I'm gonna talk to that, because honestly I need to work on that, but that's like something that I've just been dealing with. And then, so I want to talk about roadmap, right? So color changing. Everybody wants to change the colors of this thing, and I'm like, it'd be so easy if we didn't support IE11. We could just do CSS variables, right? There's actually a contributor that's doing a website. They ended up sub-theming Olivero and changing the colors in here, and it looks really good. This is like Pace Independent Living out of Toronto, and this is a development site. It's not live. But Karen G, who's a contributor, has been doing this, and Olivero we're not officially supporting subtheming, but it works, you know. And the reason that we're not officially supporting it is because it would entail more work for us. And right now we're just getting it into core. But like, hey, like people are building beautiful websites out of this, and it's really exciting. You can see this has this little hero region. We saw this and said, hey, that looks good, and now it's a hero region within the theme too. So I encourage people to do this. So our roadmap into core is like, I want to release our final alpha this week, you know, as soon as I get around to it. I want to stabilize all the regions. I just added like that social bar region in there, and we're going to rename one of, I think, the feature bottom to content bottom, and do some flexbox goodness in there so stuff looks good. Once we get into beta, we're going to work on accessibility, code quality, and bug fixes. There's not a heck of a lot of bugs. You know, there's little stuff in there, but it's pretty good. I'm really proud of it so far. In Drupal 9.1, which is coming out in November, we want to have this thing included. Hopefully it's stable, you know, but it would now be experimental. What that probably comes down to is the time that our accessibility maintainers have to be able to review stuff and provide feedback. I also forgot to say that we're actually going to be doing some real-world accessibility testing with the National Federation for the Blind, and that's probably going to come up toward the end of this month. I'm super excited about that. Drupal 9.2, I hope to make this the default theme, and yeah, so that's like a long way away, but I want to make this the default theme, and I'm excited about that. After core, I want to do the color changing. You know, I want to have that in there, and I want to support things like sub-theming, and you know, there's other things that we want to support. And like, we're seeing bugs where like people put in third-party modules, things like full calendar or select to, and stuff doesn't look right. I'm not quite sure how we should handle that, but yeah, those are that. I also want to talk about if you're going to DrupalCon Global. In DrupalCon Global, we're having 3 different kind of sessions on Olivero, if you're interested in that. The Drupal Initiatives Plenary is on Wednesday morning, and that's a bunch of people, including myself. And I have 5 minutes to talk about Olivero. You're probably not going to learn anything if you participated in this. Putra and I are giving a talk the next morning talking about the origin of the Olivero theme. And it's kind of like a rah-rah saying, hey, we're doing this. You can get your own theme. You can do your own stuff, and here's how to do it, you know? And that's going to be awesome. And the best session out of all these is Jen and Jared's session, because it's fantastic. And it's a design process, and that's Thursday right after Putra and my session. And so I like have a DrupalCon code here, and I'm willing to give it out to somebody. If you want to go to DrupalCon and you can't afford the $250 or whatever it costs, and you want to, like, put your name in the chat here, and the first person that does it can grab it, and I'll let Leslie be the decider, and then Leslie, you can just like connect us, and I'll throw a code wherever. And yeah, DrupalCon's going to be awesome. And once again, the URL, if it works, is this right here, lb.cm/Olivero. Oh, now it's working. I guess there was some. Yeah, so this is actually running like Drupal 8.8 right now, right here, but that's powered by Tugboat. Tugboat's an awesome service. And that's it. And are there any more questions or comments or virtual tomatoes or anything like that?
There's 2 quick questions, and I believe if people want to sign up, you know, to win that DrupalCon ticket or to be, you know, to be selected, use the Q&A. I think the chat might be turned off for attendees. So the 2 questions are: Jim would like to know, my current custom theme does not support Layout Builder. If I drop in Olivero, do you think that it might be a good option for the future in Drupal 9? The site is 8.9.x now.
So, I mean, keep in mind that if you change your theme to Olivero, it's going to change the whole look and feel of your theme, of what your site looks like. So I would say, yeah. So, like, if Drupal 8.9 supports, Olivero supports Drupal 8.9, you can plug it in right now. I would use the dev release. We're hopefully going to release a new alpha, but that will support Layout Builder, and it looks good. And honestly, I want as much real world usage of this as I can get, because people are saying, hey, wouldn't this be cool? Or you know, like Fox Valley Drupal user group is using Olivero, and they threw their logo in, and it's like, man, that logo's not centered properly. I fixed it, you know, and like there's just things that I see and I want to fix. So I recommend you at least playing with it.
Excellent. And the very last question, and we're running a minute over, how easy to migrate from core theme like Bartik to Olivero in terms of the configuration?
It shouldn't be too difficult. You are going to have to move over some of your blocks and move them into different regions and things like that. I think Drupal gives you like a UI to do that, if I recall correctly. But the easiest thing to do is just play with it. But everything that Bartik supports, we support. And right now, like, the theme is good enough. In my opinion, I like it a lot better than Bartik. It's fairly accessible. It needs to be better, and supports a lot more, and it's fairly stable.
Excellent. Well, thank you, and your team so much for all your hard work on Olivero.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to choose a great inspiration for the name of the theme.
Absolutely.
So that was very good. For everybody on the call, remember, go to designfordrupal.org, sign up for other webinars in our webinar series. Instead of doing the in-person event this year, we decided that we'd spread Design for Drupal over the year, have at least one webinar a month. So hop on there. There's a lot of great speakers like Mike. And thank you very much, Mike, for taking the time to do this. And if anybody has any additional questions, you can reach out to Mike on his social channels. And we did get a lot of people that are interested in the ticket. So we'll look at those. We'll probably just, pull a name. We'll put them all in a hat and just draw a name.
Yeah, you can eeny, meeny, miny, moe it, and just send me the stuff.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for everybody that attended. Have a great day.
Thanks, Leslie, and thanks for everything you do. Bye.
All right. Bye.